Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. Tweets that haven't aged well. That is the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Everybody knows once you write something on Twitter, it stays there for eternity. That could be a good thing, but could also be a very bad thing. So we decided to comb Twitter to find some tweets that haven't stood the test of time. Let's begin. Michael Moore writes in 2015, "Actually, Harvey Weinstein is one of the best people to work with in this town. Hashtag fun fact never reported." Not so fun if you're a woman. Here's Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Liberal Labour Party in Great Britain in 2013. "Thanks Hugo Chavez for showing that the poor matter and wealth can be shared. He made massive contributions to Venezuela and a very wide world." As many of you know, the late socialist Hugo Chavez ran the Venezuelan economy into the ground. The country is running out of food, the government is running out of money, and we're looking at a full-blown humanitarian crisis. Heck of a job, Hugo. And New York Times White House correspondent Maggie Haberman wrote this when Anthony Scaramucci was tapped as White House communications director. "Mooch isn't a communications professional, but his messaging is smooth and level-headed." Really, Maggie? Smooth and level-headed?
And Ryan's is a paranoid schizophrenic, paranoiac. Let me leak the thing and see if I can block these people the way I block Scaramucci for 6 months. I'm not Steve Bannon. No. I'm not trying to suck my own.
Now, Waters World loves the Mooch, and he's welcome here anytime. We're just having a little fun. And just days before the 2012 election, the Democrats tweeted this. "Romney, who calls Russia our, quote, #1 geopolitical foe, doesn't seem to realize it's the 21st century. Hashtag Romney not ready." Now, the last time I checked, Democrats not too happy with Russia. Speaking of Russia, this is what MSNBC host Joy Reid said this summer. "Trump continues to take the Republican Party to new lows. Their new ethic, it is perfectly okay to seek campaign oppo from a foreign adversary." Isn't that exactly what we just found out Hillary Clinton did when her campaign paid millions for a dirty dossier chock full of fake Russian sources? Now, to be fair and balanced, here's Donald Trump in 2012 before he became president, tweeting, "The Electoral College is a disaster for a democracy." And here is President Trump after he won said Electoral College.
"The amazing thing about the Electoral College is that you stop at all these states." I was going all over the place. I was stopping at states. And that's what our founders had in mind, and that's what people had in mind. It's an amazing thing. It really is.
But we're not going to let Barack Obama off the hook either. Here's the former president in 2012 saying this. President Obama said, "By 2014, the war in Afghanistan will be over." Well, it's 2017, and we are still at war in Afghanistan. Now let's bring in Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She was the chairwoman on the Democratic National Committee. Here she is poking fun at Reince Priebus during the Republican National Convention. "Hey, Reince, I'm in Cleveland if you need another chair to help keep your convention in order." Funny thing is, Debbie got busted rigging the primary against Bernie and never even survived to make it to her own convention.
The head of the Democratic National Committee, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, resigning under fire late today, all in the face of an uproar over a batch of emails made public by WikiLeaks.
All right, and now, my personal favorite. Here was Hillary Clinton last year, just 2 weeks before the election, wishing herself a happy birthday. Happy birthday to this future president. And that, my friends, was a tweet that did not age well. And joining me now is the executive vice president of the Trump Organization and son of President Trump, Eric Trump. So what do you think about some of those tweets?
I mean, especially the last one, right?
It's classic.
You know, happy birthday to the future president. That's the exact reason she didn't win.
She was so cocky.
Smug. Do you remember the stage do you remember when she wanted to give her victory speech in the Javits Center here in New York? Mm-hmm. She had the most incredible stage under the glass ceiling. She had $3 million worth of fireworks outside. I mean, they spent more time designing the stage than they did working on the actual campaign.
It's true.
And it's why we ran by her, even though she outraised us, 6-1, 7-1. It's that smug attitude That's why she's not the commander-in-chief right now.
And everybody cried and screamed that night because they were so upset. And now on the eve or the anniversary of the election, they're going to have a scream fest in cities across the country. Very mature attitude for the Democrats.
Yeah, go scream. It didn't win. I mean, I think this country wanted to get back to rational thinking. I think this country was sick of PC nonsense. I think this country was sick of entitlement, career politicians that had never actually held a job in their life. I mean, people voted against that. That's why you saw kind of, the revolution, the movement, the whatever you want to call it, that my father had. I mean, people were sick and tired of the old. And listen, that's why, against all odds, against all predictions, against all polls, he did so well.
And speaking of PC nonsense, later in the show, I went out and I asked about offensive Halloween costumes. I think you're going to enjoy that, Eric. But before we get to that, I wanted to talk to you. Your father announced that there was an opioid crisis, public health emergency. And on Thursday, shared a very personal story about his brother.
Yeah.
Let's listen.
I had a brother, Fred. Great guy. Best looking guy. Best personality. Much better than mine. But he had a problem. He had a problem with alcohol. And he would tell me, don't drink. The fact is, if we can teach young people and people generally not to start, it's really, really easy not to take them.
It sounds like your father had a very close relationship with his brother.
He did. And, that whole segment, I was watching that, and I thought it was so beautiful. First of all, he was totally off teleprompter. He was speaking from the heart. You rarely ever see, quote-unquote, politicians doing that, and I thought it was beautiful. I mean, he was telling a story about something that affected his life greatly and, quite frankly, in so many ways, shaped who he is as a person. And
he doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do any of that.
And going to school every day, I'll never forget this. I'd always go give him a kiss goodbye before I went to school, and he would always look at me. I was 5 years old, 6 years old, right? He'd always say, Eric, no drinking, no smoking, no drugs. You got it? No drinking, no smoking, no drugs. I'm like, Dad, what is drinking? What is, I'm 5 years old. I mean, these things, you can't even comprehend.
He started you young, but that's good.
Are, but that was the message every single day I was going to school. No drinking, no smoking, no drugs, and then he'd normally yell at me, you better get good grades, right? But I mean, he drove that home because it impacted his life, and this is something he takes deadly seriously. And I love to see him go out and find pain medications that don't have kind of the addictive effects. I mean, how smart is that? I mean, how smart is it? You see these people's bathrooms full of prescription drugs and their kids going in and taking them, and what that ultimately leads to is very, very sad. And there's a lot of common sense things that can be done aside from the wall and aside from drugs coming into this country, but could stop it because it's really gutting youth in this country, but people in this country. It's ruining futures.
Yeah, all across the country, not just in the cities either.
Sure.
It's all across the Midwest and the industrial Midwest. And I saw when I went to West Virginia, I see these towns and they're just hollowed out. No one has jobs and people are just hanging out on the side of the street because there's no hope. So they rely on the opioids, the pills, in order to feel better.
It has to stop. And he is dead set commit. And it's funny, when I saw him go across the country, it was always his first talking point. It was always his second talking point. I mean, no matter where he was, we are going to stop the drug problem in this country. Somebody has to do something about it. It's going to be one of my top priorities. I mean, he always started that. And I think Fred probably had a lot to do with that. And I think his brother's experience had a lot to do with that. And I'm really, really happy. I was proud of him when I saw him give that speech.
Yeah, you could really tell how emotionally invested he is because of his experience with his brother. I wanted to ask you about your brother. Caught a lot of heat from the press for that meeting he had at Trump Tower where some Russian lady came in with some dirt, didn't ever actually have any dirt, no money changed hands. He cut the meeting short. Turns out Hillary paid millions of dollars for dirt.
$9 million to be exact.
$9 million to be exact. Not a small amount of money. These are the Russian sources, anonymous, saying all kinds of lies about the campaign. That got into the bloodstream. The FBI is looking at it, paid the guy's expenses who dug it up, and all of a sudden that's opposition research.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Right?
Yeah, my brother has a meeting about adoption in Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the meeting turned out to be, adoption in Russia. They spent $9 million, and Podesta doesn't know. Oh, I had no idea. How do you not know that $9 million left your campaign? How Hillary Clinton do you not know?
That's why she ran such a bad campaign.
That $9 million left your campaign and where it went. I mean, we could account for every cent of what. I mean, if you could let $9 million escape a campaign and not know where it was going, you should not be commander-in-chief.
It shows how poorly the organization was under her leadership.
But
now,
I don't think it's poor. I literally, they know. They're just lying
They're
about
lying
it.
about it.
I mean, come on. You know where $9 million that goes to a law firm is going. That's not a rounding error.
And Podesta actually told the Senate committee that he had no idea. Now, I don't know what kind of trouble he is in. I don't know what kind of trouble Hillary will face. But it looks like the DOJ is starting to really turn the screws on this. 'Cause if this fake dossier, paid for by the Clintons, was used as the base to acquire wiretaps, to create the narrative that there was this collusion, I mean, that is really dirty from the jump.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. Opposition research, right? Go back. Okay, were you ever arrested for this? Did you ever have any problems? Did you ever do anything that would disqualify you from running for government? Sure. I mean, all of that stuff's on the table. It's very different.
That's why I'm not ever running for office.
It's very different than paying $9 million to have somebody go out and fabricate a story that's based on total lies. I mean, it's fraudulent. First of all, it's not right. It's immoral. But I mean, you're effectively committing fraud. I mean, it's horrible stuff.
And we have someone coming on at the end of the show to talk about, could Hillary Clinton actually be looking at some felonies? So the whole lock her up chant might turn out true. Eric.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and
Great
congrats on the baby.
Thank you.
All right. Kellyanne Conway and Dean Cain up next. And later, Waters World asking liberals about offensive Halloween costumes. President Trump keeping his border wall promise as 8 wall prototypes were completed this week along the San Diego border. They are now being inspected for durability. And while covering this story on Monday, MSNBC, who takes every opportunity to bash Mr. Trump's border plan, was hit with a bout of irony.
What happened? The people are crossing. Almost on cue, a group of asylum seekers, migrants not from Mexico, jumped over the existing fence to turn themselves in to border agents on horseback.
It's like a small group of 3 people just jumped over in the middle of the day. Girl there with a pink backpack.
Can you explain to me what's going on?
This is the reality of everyday border enforcement. Well, the United States is still the draw, the ultimate draw.
Joining me now to discuss this and other real news this week is actor and host of Masters of Illusion, Dean Cain.
Yes.
Asylum seekers.
Asylum seekers, not illegal immigrants,
refugees.
Refugees. They were coming over for asylum. That was it.
Yes.
Not undocumented illegal immigrants. None of that.
No.
Asylum seekers.
And I can't believe they actually put this in the package.
It's surprising.
I'm surprised.
Normally you'd think they would edit that out and go,
right.
Oh, that didn't happen here. The walls, they're terrible. It's
That's
awful.
right. No need. The border's fine. Now the reporter's name is Jacob Soboroff. I've seen him out in the conventions. He, a lot of shoe leather on the ground. He does a good job. But asylum seekers,
that's
not really sure. Why doesn't he call them nomads while he's at it?
Yes, because nomads just wander over.
Just wander around, just wandering. They're maybe looking for lunch.
Yeah, that I think that was one story where they were trying to get an angle, and then a whole other story developed.
Reality intruded. Now, I want to show you a tweet. This is Ellen DeGeneres, and she was wishing Katy Perry a happy birthday. She says, "Happy birthday, Katy Perry. It's time to bring out the big balloons." And she was looking down at Katy Perry. Now, just in the current environment with everything swirling around, if that had been a man who had said that, destroyed.
Nuked on the spot. Literally just flesh coming off. There's no way you could do that.
Never work again.
PC culture's gotten out of control. I don't think Ellen meant anything bad.
She didn't.
It's a quote from a song that Katy Perry has about the big... Great fun, but if a man had done it, finished.
Right, and she actually caught a lot of heat on Twitter for doing that. I guess you just have to be careful with everything you do these days.
Unfortunately, that's the case, and it is unfortunate because people make jokes and say things in private time, but I guess Twitter is not private time.
No, it's not.
So yeah, watch your P's and Q's and balloons.
And we love Ellen.
Love
Never
her.
going to say anything bad about Ellen because we all want to be on Ellen's show.
Yeah, I've been on that show a few times.
Did you dance?
I did not dance.
Smart move.
Therefore, still have a career. Because it's not a great thing.
Okay, good. Now, I want to get into something. I know you've been very interested in this, the whole Kaepernick situation. Ratings are down across the board. He looks like he's going to have a meeting with the owners possibly next week. He signed $1 million book deal. Seems to be almost profiting off of this at this point. How do you feel about Colin?
Well, Colin, it's an interesting thing. He was protesting police brutality at the beginning, and that's what he was. As he was sitting on the bench because he wasn't playing. Right. Then he got an opportunity and did all right for a little bit. But he's on the downswing of his career. He opted out of his contract. People fail to say this all the time. He opted out of his final contract, the final year of his contract, testing the free agent market. Nobody wanted to pick him up. And
bad move.
The thing about it, he's having this meeting with the owners, and it's about, they're colluding to keep him out. Here's the deal. On a team, when you play on a team, if you have somebody, I don't care how good they are, if they are poison in the locker room, you're done. The chemistry is something that's very tangible, and I know some players who are great who were poison in the locker room. And if that's the case, it detracts from what you're trying to do. And I, as an owner, if that were the case and I felt like he wasn't a good fit, that's enough right there.
And remember, T.O., I think, still had a lot of gas left in the tank, but he was toxic. No one wanted to sign him. Now, speaking of owners, we had an owner get into a little bit of trouble. Texans owner Bob McConnell said we can't have the inmates running the prison. He's talking about the whole kneeling controversy. Now, he had to apologize for that. People very upset with that comment.
Perhaps wrong choice of words.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, that was certainly not the right thing to say. It's unfortunate that he said that, but what he's saying is, the employees can't be dictating policy, which is maybe a better way to have said it.
Right. It was the prison analogy.
The prison, of course,
did not work.
And it shouldn't, and that was an awful thing to say. Yeah.
Now, did you play football at some point?
Yeah, I played. In college, I played at Princeton University.
Right. What position?
Free safety.
Okay.
And then I played professionally for the Buffalo Bills for about an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
I got injured, so I was out. But I still have lots of friends, and Jason Garrett's one of my closest friends. Who's the head coach
Where'd you hurt?
Of the Cowboys. My knee, my right knee.
But you don't take a knee.
I would never.
You would never do that.
I would never take a knee. Listen, if your problem is that you want to protest against police brutality, there are better ways to go about that. I think Roger Goodell's done a very poor job.
I would agree.
In handling this and other scandals. I don't like how he handled Adrian Peterson. I don't like how he handled Ray Rice. I don't like how he handled Tom Brady.
I completely agree. All right, Dean, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Kellyanne Conway on the opioid crisis.
Hello.
President Trump declaring Thursday the opioid crisis a national public health emergency. West Virginia leading the country in opioid overdose deaths. Waters World was there last year. What do people do for fun around here?
We like guns, we like big engines, we like naked parties, drink a beer, go fishing. If you use your imagination, buddy, Clay County, we do it.
Is heroin a problem around here?
No, it's just mostly pills and pot.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's what happens when there's no work. Joining me now, someone who has been at the forefront of the president's drug fighting efforts, counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
Thanks for coming on, Kellyanne. I hate to use West Virginia as an example when it comes to this stuff, but I was listening to Senator Manchin the other day say that there's a town there, 400 people population, and 1 million painkillers shipped into that town. It's just unbelievable. Is this the kind of effort that you guys are putting forth where you could see executives face jail time?
Well, you can't ignore the numbers. And when a Democratic senator like Joe Manchin comes forward and joins the president and the first lady in the audience here yesterday in the White House and goes on TV and talks about the crisis facing his state, it's very important to put that voice and visibility behind this. The president laid out a multi-step plan yesterday, and part of it was what you're intimating, which is making sure that those who are over-prescribing are put on notice. Pain management does not always mean pain medicine.
Right.
We have millions of chronic pain sufferers in this country. That's different than what we're talking about here. We're talking about the person who gets the surgery or the injury or the dental procedure and goes home with one or two bottles of pills, and then they either don't finish them, they get into the wrong hands, or they get hooked on them. But look, I'm glad you raised West Virginia, because West Virginia is unique in a couple of ways, and not just because of the staggering deaths and use there. It's unique, one, because it is the only state right now that got the IMD waiver exclusion. All that means is that This president wants to loosen the regulations so that when you get your 17th bed, you're not considered this big facility that can't get Medicaid reimbursement. You can still give in-facility treatment to folks who need it. Can you imagine how long the waiting list is? And when you get your 17th bed, the federal government isn't reimbursing you. So the president wants to do away with that. Also, West Virginia is special because 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of traveling there with the First Lady. And to have the First Lady's input and ideas and platform behind this very important issue where she's focusing on youth prevention and education, I thought it was such a humbling moment on Thursday for the First Lady to say drug addiction can happen to any of us, and the president to tap into his very personal, very raw experience with his older brother Fred.
Yeah, and we played that at the top of the
lot of Americans.
We played it with the top of the show with Eric Trump, and you could really hear the emotion in the president's voice. And you heard Eric say about how when he was a 5-year-old kid, his father would tell him before he left for school, no drinking, no drugs, no smoking, nothing like that. So they're very invested as a whole family in fighting this. Now, I was talking to Juan Williams, our friend Juan, who means well on the 5 the other day. And I said, Juan, can Democrats get on board, leaving Manchin aside? Can most Democrats get on board with the president's plan to fight the opioid epidemic? And he said no. And I said, why, Juan? What's the problem? And he said, because the president is trying to criminalize people. Now, from what I understood, that's not the case. This is more treatment-based and regulatory-based, correct?
Yeah, he's not talking about criminalizing anyone who needs treatment and recovery. He's trying to help. Look, 3 things. First of all, this prevention education. Don't start in the first place. But you've got these kids today. You said, Eric Trump was told by his dad many years ago, don't drink, don't take drugs when he left the house at 5. Now some of these parents are saying, don't drink the chocolate milk and don't eat the French fries. Seriously, everybody? How about let's get back to telling the kids, don't ingest poison. You got these kids on college campuses. They're very into the way they look, their health, and then they take a pill they bought for $5 from someone they trust, but they don't know where that someone got it from someone.
You never know what's in these things.
And more of the case is that it's laced with fentanyl. There is no ingredient packet on these pills you're buying cheaply. So the president, first and foremost, is saying don't start to begin with. For those who are in treatment and need I think Medicaid-assisted treatment, they need in-facility treatment, those individuals will have the help they need. The president's not talking about criminalizing, he's talking about helping them. And do you know, Jesse, that the Senate bill on health included getting rid of that waiver so that you can treat more people, and it had $45 billion for opioid funding, and not a single Democrat will come forward and do it. Plus, you got interdiction and enforcement. You got to get the fentanyl, the heroin out of this place. It's coming
and
through the Postal Service.
Part of the deal with the border wall, that keeps a lot of the heroin pouring over from Mexico. And the fentanyl, a lot of it's manufactured over in China. The president said he was going to take it up with the Chinese leader when he spoke to him. Now, let me ask you really quickly, because we only have about a minute left, taxes. Now, I'm hearing some rumors, Kellyanne. I'm getting very upset. I'm still hearing rumors about them messing with 401ks. And second of all, I'm hearing rumors that people making over $1 million aren't going to get a tax cut at all. That's not fair, first of all. Second of all, the tax cut, when you talk about people making over $1 million, that's what's really going to stimulate a lot of economic growth. What's going on now with taxes?
Well, a few things. First of all, the president was very forceful this week through a tweet and otherwise in talking about protecting 401ks because he, first and foremost, believes that we have to have middle-class tax relief. We don't even call it tax reform. Most days we call it tax cuts because reform is like semantic speak. It's swamp semantics speak. But this president wants an across-the-board tax cut for middle-class families.
What about people making over $1 million?
Well, if you're a small business owner, you're going to go down to 20%, lowest tax, 25% lowest tax bracket for you.
What if you're not a small business owner?
And if you, all of that's still being decided, though, Jesse. But look, this president has said to them from the beginning, make sure that this benefits the middle class first and foremost. If you are a job creator and you're in that $1 million category, you're going to go from 35% to 20%. That's unheard of. I mean,
I'm hearing from your answer that the people that aren't small business owners that are making over $1 million are getting a tax cut.
No,
I
didn't say that. I said none of that is being decided. None of that has been finally decided. There is no bill written yet. We're talking about principles. We just passed the budget. The House passed the Senate budget, and it's important for everyone to hear all inputs. We understand that. We understand who bears the brunt of the tax burden in this country.
Right.
But this president has made clear two main principles: middle-class tax relief and reduce that tax bracket on our job creators so you spur growth, and we repatriate those trillions of dollars that are parked legally overseas, bring them home.
And you guys had a great week. You had the 3% GDP growth. You had the budget coming out of the House, and this whole Russia thing's boomeranging on the Democrats. So go celebrate this weekend.
Your grandmother was right. Be careful what you wish for.
Thank you very much, Kellyanne.
Thank you.
Is Hillary Clinton going to go to jail? We're going to debate that up next. New fallout surrounding the so-called Trump dossier. This week, we learned that the Clinton campaign and the DNC spent several $1 million to pay for a phony dossier filled with dirty Russian sources. Here's Clinton's former spokesman on that.
Just to be clear, Brian, you have said previously in the last 24 hours you don't believe Hillary Clinton knew about this either. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't asked. I haven't spoken to her. No.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Shouldn't she know? Shouldn't you, someone so high up in the campaign, be informed of this?
Well, I mean, she may have known, but the degree of exactly what she knew is beyond my knowledge.
President Trump called Clinton's involvement disgraceful.
Don't forget, Hillary Clinton totally denied this. She didn't know anything. She knew nothing. All of a sudden it found out. What I was amazed at, it's almost $6 million that they paid, and it's totally discredited. It's a total phony. I call it fake news. It's disgraceful.
Joining me now, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, Ben Shapiro, and Democratic strategist Richard Fowler. So, Ben, let's start with you. Do you believe Hillary is lying when she claims she didn't know about funding the fake dossier, or do you believe she's so incompetent that her campaign was spending millions and she just didn't know?
I find it highly implausible that she didn't know that the campaign was spending millions of dollars on the dossier. The big question here is going to be what level of culpability she holds for the dossier, including sources that are clearly inside the Russian government, especially while the entire campaign was going out there claiming that Trump was colluding with Russia in order to take down Hillary. Now it looks like there's a fair bit of evidence that the Hillary Clinton campaign was at least working with a spy who was working with the Russian government in order to dig up dirt on Trump.
Let me ask you that, Richard. Same question. Did she know? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know. Do you think she should have known?
I mean, I think we have to figure. I think we should ask the Clinton campaign. We should ask Hillary Clinton these questions. I think they paid this company to do opposition research, and as part of that opposition research, it seems to be clear from the evidence that this individual worked with the Russians to dig up information on the president. And I do.
So she paid for a guy to work with Russians.
No, excuse me. She paid for a firm. This particular, based on this evidence,
worked with Russians.
Went to the Russians and got information.
Okay.
If this is true,
did she collude with the Russians?
I don't know.
Well, you just said she paid money to have a guy.
You're asking me like I work for the. You're asking me like I work for the Clinton campaign.
Well, I'm just using your same argument that you used against Don Jr.
I didn't use that argument against Don Jr.
Your party said that was collusion.
Whoa, hold on. Hold on. Let's be. There was emails released, and I've said, and you've heard me say this. I said on the 5. I've said it with you. I've said it over and over again. You can't use a group of leaked emails to make facts off of them. We only saw some of these emails, not all of these emails. Mueller has seen all these emails. Mueller and his team is the only person who knows what actually happened in that meeting, and the obvious people in the meeting who know that. So we have to wait to see with this investigation what they know and we have to wait to see what happens at the end of that investigation. Okay. But let's be very clear here. He met with these particular Russian lawyers about adoptions and sanctions and other things, and we have to wait to see what happens.
I don't think Don Jr. ever paid anybody millions of dollars. Ben, let me ask you a question. If the FBI or the Department of Justice under President Obama used this fake dossier paid for by Hillary as the basis to ask for FISA warrants to spy on Trump campaign officials, how wrong would that have been?
So the big question here is whether every claim in the dossier is untrue or whether the most spectacular claims in the dossier, the P tape and all that nonsense, whether only that part is untrue. It's possible, to give the FBI the benefit of the doubt. It is possible that the FBI looks at the dossier, they go and they independently verify some elements of the dossier and use that as an excuse for a FISA warrant. If they didn't do that, if they just took the dossier at face value, or if they knew that the claims in the dossier were not true and then they went and got a FISA warrant based on that, and a FISA judge ruled wrongly based on that, then that would obviously be scandalous. It would be the politicization of the FBI on behalf of the Clinton campaign.
And it's funny because the FBI and the Department of Justice have not really been forthcoming about the dossier, if there was money that changed hands, if that was used as a justification. But I want to get to Richard on something. Uranium One. Is this a big problem for the Clintons? Because as you know, millions of dollars, over about $145 million poured into the Clinton Foundation right before, during, and after she checked the box to sign off on allowing Russia to have access to 20% of the uranium deposits in North America.
So a couple things on this Uranium One deal. Thing number one, there was 9 government agencies that was part of the commission that made the decision to give 20% of our uranium to this particular company, number one. Number two, and more importantly, the individual that we're talking about here who gave money to the Clinton Foundation divested 3 years prior to ever giving money to the Clinton Foundation. And number three, Jesse, I understand the concern. I understand why people in America are concerned about this uranium deal. And if they are concerned, let's not waste time with a political hearing. Let's not waste time with Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes having a committee hearing about this. And let's actually have seasoned professional prosecutors look at the evidence. Let's have a grand jury impaneled, and let's see if Hillary Clinton, her State Department, and the Clinton Foundation actually engaged in wrongdoing. And if there was criminal malfeasance, and let's move on.
That's a
but
fair
let's
assessment.
not play political games.
Okay,
with
well,
this.
I mean, it's politics, so their games are going to be played. Real quick, Ben, I want to get your take. Greg Jarrett, over our guy at Fox News, said that there's some possible crimes Hillary could be facing if indeed this is as bad as it looks. Racketeering, there's a bribery, there's a wire fraud possibility. How do you see this playing out? Is it going to get worse, this uranium deal?
I'd be surprised if it doesn't. I mean, obviously, I agree with Richard that maybe a special counsel should be appointed to take a look at the uranium deal and investigate the FBI and the DOJ too, because obviously they knew that there was corruption going on between Rosatom, the Russian Atomic Energy Agency that was responsible for this deal, and the Russian government, and they'd said nothing at the same time that this deal was being approved. So a special prosecutor seems like a serious possibility here. This is not a place where criminal activity is utterly off the wall. It's definitely possible that something criminal here happened. I do definitely agree with Richard that a full investigation is warranted.
Okay. Ben, Richard, thank you guys very much. Up next, Halloween's just around the corner. And so are offensive Halloween costumes. A special Waters World report up next. It's almost Halloween, so what are you most afraid of? And what costumes do you find offensive? Waters World went down to left-wing New York University to find out. Halloween coming up. What scares you the most?
Ghosts.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No, but the concept. Clowns.
Pennywise the dancing clown.
Anaphylaxis or appendicitis.
It sounds like you got some issues.
No.
I'm freaking out, man.
What scares you?
The state of this country.
Liberals. Liberals on this campus scare me.
Yeah. They can be a little spooky.
They're very scary, yeah.
What costumes do you find offensive on Halloween?
For example, like an Indian, or something. I don't know.
Native American.
Yeah, Native American.
But I thought multiculturalism was a good thing.
It is, but there's complex structures to it that add layers and make it more complicated than that.
What the hell are you talking about?
Are you offended by any Halloween costumes?
If you're white, don't be a black person for Halloween.
Everyone should be able to wear whatever Halloween costume they want.
Even from another race?
Yeah.
Do you consider any Halloween costumes offensive?
Maybe the people that have nothing on at all.
When they go in their birthday suit?
Yeah. We're going streaking! Yeah!
Does Donald Trump scare you?
Oh, yes. I mean, I hear my friends in California have like air shelters and doing the old air raid drills again.
If someone dressed up as Donald Trump came to your door for Halloween, would you give him candy?
No.
What about Donald Trump scares you?
His hair. I don't wear a toupee. It's my hair. I swear.
Does Donald Trump scare you?
He scares me.
Why?
Because I'm a woman and he's a sexual predator as well as the worst president ever.
Does Donald Trump scare you?
Terrifies me.
You don't want to make America great again?
No, America's never great.
What about when America defeated the Nazis? What should I wear for my Halloween costume?
You could be a newscaster?
Do you guys think I'm in costume right now?
I think so.
Maybe.
I don't know how to put this. I'm kind of a big deal.
Does Fox News scare you?
No, I just don't watch it.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, then how do you know what's going on?
Like the internet?
I'm Waters, and this is my world.
Okay.
Joining me now, commentator and professor at Johns Hopkins University, Wendy Acefo. All right, Wendy, I'm not very politically correct, so please do me a favor. Explain why I, as a white male, can't dress up as any other culture.
Well, you know, there's so many layers to it, and I think that that's what that student said that was so beautiful. We cannot use someone's culture as a costume. It doesn't make any sense. When we look at Halloween and the roots of Halloween, it was made to, you know, be a time of quote-unquote celebration before All Saints Day, which is the next day. And so on Halloween, we're supposed to dress up as ghouls, vampires, you know, all of that good stuff. But I think it's okay for us to stay away from culture a little bit because it's offensive.
Okay, so tell me in very simple terms.
Sure.
Why I, on Halloween, the day you wear costumes to have fun and celebrate, can't wear a sombrero.
Because you are then making someone's culture, because there are people who a sombrero is reflective of their culture, you are turning someone's culture into a caricature, and that is offensive.
Who does it offend? Do you know any Mexican or Mexican Americans that tell you that people wear sombreros on Halloween?
Absolutely.
You've heard them say that.
They have said that. You even have universities, you know, that have reached out and giving their students memos and said, you know what, before Halloween, let us have this conversation. You cannot wear a sombrero. You cannot dress up as a geisha. You cannot do anything that falls in the line of cultural appropriation because it's offensive to your fellow man on this campus. So you can't do that, you know?
So could a Mexican American dress up like a white guy like me?
Well, you know, that when we're talking about culture, let's not talk about race because those are two different things. Culture is not the same thing as race,
fine.
and that's
so
what you're trying to do.
Could a Mexican American dress up as a pilgrim?
Well, a pilgrim, that's a culture, right? Like, that's offensive. You cannot do that.
So it would offend the pilgrims?
Well, Jesse, you and I both know that there really aren't any people who claim to be pilgrims right now, but there are people who claim to be Mexican,
well,
and that's the difference.
Descendants of pilgrims.
Yes, and if they're offended, then by all means, they should say that. I am Nigerian, so I'm speaking from also a place where if someone dresses up in, let's say, my cultural garb, which includes a head tie and the clothes, I will be offended because that's my everyday culture.
I just want to find out what the guidelines are. Real quick, one last question.
Sure.
If I wanted to dress up as Colin Kaepernick, could I throw a jersey on and wear an afro and get down on one knee when I went trick-or-treating?
No, you cannot do that.
No.
No.
Why not?
Because that actually is multi-layered. Not only is that an issue of you, a Caucasian gentleman wearing that afro, right? But that's also an issue of the social implications of it. We all know that there has been a lot of firestorm and backlash when it comes to Colin Kaepernick and taking the knee.
Wow.
So then again, it has issues there.
Wendy, I am so glad you told me. And now I know what not to dress up for as Halloween, and this has been enlightening. I'm still a little confused, but I'm going to listen to all of your advice and just play it safe, okay?
Thank you, Jesse. Happy Halloween.
All right, happy Halloween. All right, up next, find out what costume I'm going to wear for Halloween. Time now for Ask Waters. First up, Frenchie Firecracker asks, boxers or briefs? Who am I, Bill Clinton? Brendan King wants to know, what are you dressing up as this Halloween? I think I'm going to go as the border wall. That can't offend anybody. And Joe Gerstner tweets, my wife is more attracted to you than me. Can you please turn off the charm? It's impossible. Just can't help it. That's all for us tonight. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.
Don't